So right now, in this highly secure, heavily monitored facility over in the Golan Heights,
Yeah.
there's a group of specialists, and they're carefully inspecting a small herd of perfectly red cows, literally using magnifying glasses,
Hmm.
checking every single follicle.
Right, because the rules are incredibly strict.
Exactly. If they find, even a single white or black hair on one of these cows, the animal is completely disqualified, and the stakes here couldn't be higher. Because the people breeding these animals actually believe the ashes of a flawless red heifer are the final literal puzzle piece required to, well, trigger the end of the world as we know it.
I mean, it sounds exactly like the plot of some esoteric thriller,
Absolutely.
but it's not. It is a very real, very state-sponsored agricultural project happening as we speak.
Yeah, and that is why we are here today. Welcome to today's Deep Dive. We're thrilled you're joining us because today we are unpacking just a massive, intense stack of sources.
A really heavy stack.
Yeah. We're looking at everything from a viral video analyzing this dusty family Bible printed in 1818
Mhm.
to the hyper-specific mathematical prophecies of the book of Daniel,
Right,
all the way up to today's breaking global headlines.
right.
Because today is March 28th, 2026, and the world is currently watching a massive, escalating global war in the Middle East.
Yeah, the headlines are terrifying right now.
They really are. So our mission today is to connect these seemingly disparate dots, to explore a very specific, incredibly powerful belief. This idea that the year 2026 fulfills a 6,000-year biblical timeline, which supposedly ushers in the return of the Messiah and a 1,000-year era of profound global peace.
Right, and I think it's vital we state our parameters right up front for you guys listening.
Absolutely.
Our job today is not to take a side. We are navigating incredibly tense political, military, and religious waters here.
Yeah, we're spanning Israeli policy, Iranian military strategy, secular analysis.
Deeply held theological beliefs, all of it. And we aren't endorsing any of it. Not the left-wing, right-wing, secular, or religious viewpoints. We are simply putting on our investigative hats, right? We want to show you exactly what these original sources say, and more importantly, show you how these specific beliefs are actively driving the chaotic global headlines you're reading right now.
Exactly. So let's just start with the macro timeline. Because to understand why the world feels like it's vibrating on a knife's edge today,
And it really does.
yeah, we have to look at the big picture, pointing directly to the year 2026. And strangely enough, the source that brought this to the forefront for millions of people recently wasn't like a theological journal.
No, it was an Instagram video.
Right. A woman named Kayla Hodgins analyzed this historic leather-bound Bible published in 1818, and the video just completely blew up.
Well, it went viral because it taps into this deep-seated, very human curiosity about the total age of humanity.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It provides a tangible artifact, this old book that claims to actually have the master timeline of human existence mapped out.
So she walks through the math, right? It's found in the genealogical timelines printed in the front of this 1818 Bible. And it's largely based on the work of biblical scholars from centuries past.
Specifically, Archbishop James Ussher.
Right, the guy who famously pegged the beginning of creation at around 4004 BC. So the timeline in this specific Bible calculates that there were 3,974 years from Adam to the birth of Jesus.
Okay.
Then it notes there are 1,815 years from the birth of Christ to the year this specific Bible was published, which is 1818. These 6,000. We are crossing a massive 6,000-year threshold right now. And this is what I don't get. Why does that specific number, 6,000, hold so much weight in these traditions?
Well, it comes down to a fundamental theological framework found in several Jewish and Christian traditions. Human history is viewed through a 7-part structure that mirrors the 7 days of creation in the book of Genesis.
Okay, the 7 days.
Right. The framework relies on a verse from the text stating that with the Lord, a day is like 1,000 years.
Oh, I see.
Therefore, the theory suggests humanity gets 6 days or 6,000 years of human labor, struggle, war, and toil.
It's like a cosmic work week.
Exactly.
Like humanity has been grinding away for 6 millennia, getting battered and bruised, and we are currently staring at the clock ticking toward 5:40 p.m. on a Friday. We're just exhausted and desperately waiting to clock out.
That is a perfect way to visualize it because after the 6 days of work comes the 7th day, the Sabbath.
Ah, the day of rest.
Right. The final 1,000 years, which is almost universally associated with a Messianic reign, a millennial era of divine rest, justice, and peace.
Okay.
So in this worldview, hitting the 6,000-year mark around 2026 isn't necessarily about the, fiery destruction of the physical planet.
It's not the end of the world.
No, it's viewed as a massive spiritual reset. The current corrupt era of human self-rule closes, and a divinely guided, peaceful phase finally begins.
I mean, I understand the appeal of that framework. It's comforting, but I have to push back on the methodology here. Building a massive worldview on a specific year like 2026 seems incredibly fragile.
How so?
Because human calendars are notoriously messy.
Right.
We shifted from the Julian calendar to the Gregorian calendar. We've had leap year adjustments, historical miscalculations by monks. I mean, isn't tying the fate of the world to an exact rigid date based on a 19th century book incredibly risky?
Oh, it absolutely is. And historical scholars raise that exact critique. You can't rely on broad millennium counts when the calendars themselves have been warped by popes and emperors over centuries. However, the believers driving this narrative today, they don't just rely on Archbishop Usher's broad math. They anchor their belief in the hyper-specific mathematical precision of ancient prophets.
Okay.
Specifically, they look to the book of Daniel.
Daniel 9.24 through 27. This is one of the densest sources in our stack.
It is very dense.
But the implications are staggering. I mean, this is actually the only passage in the entire Old Testament that explicitly uses the title Messiah.
And Daniel doesn't just mention the Messiah's coming eventually, right? He provides a strict mathematical countdown to his arrival.
Right, the stopwatch.
Exactly. It's a prophecy known as the 77s. Daniel is writing from Babylon in exile after the destruction of the first Jewish temple. He receives a vision stating that from the issuing of a decree to restore and rebuild the destroyed city of Jerusalem until the Messiah, the Anointed One, arrives, there will be 7 sevens and 62 sevens.
Wait, okay, let me do the math. 77, so 70 times 7, that's a 490-year countdown timer.
Yes.
They're basically given a starting gun and a very specific stopwatch.
Exactly. And the starting gun is a matter of historical record. The Persian Emperor Artaxerxes issued the formal decree to rebuild Jerusalem's walls around 444 BC.
Yeah.
Now, to address your earlier point about messy calendars, here's where we have to look at the mechanism of ancient timekeeping. The ancient Babylonian and Hebrew prophets didn't use our modern 365-day solar calendar.
Oh, right.
They operated on a 360-day lunar prophetic calendar.
Okay, so a slightly shorter year based on the moon cycles, which means we can't just subtract 483 years from 444 BC using today's calendar.
No, the math wouldn't work.
We have to convert those ancient years into raw individual days to see where the timer actually stops. Let me work this out.
Go for it.
The prophecy says the Messiah comes after 69 of those sevens. So 69 times 7 is 483 years. You take those 483 years, multiply them by the 360 days in their calendar, and you get exactly 173,880 days.
Yes. And when biblical scholars and astronomers count forward exactly 173,880 days from Artaxerxes' decree in 444 BC, it bypasses those calendar shifts you mentioned entirely.
Wow.
It lands perfectly in the spring of AD 33.
Which perfectly aligns with the historical timeline of Jesus Christ presenting himself to the nation of Israel.
Riding into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday.
Just days before he was crucified.
Right. And the textual alignment goes even further. Daniel's prophecy explicitly says that after those 62 sevens, the Messiah will be cut off and have nothing.
Meaning the crucifixion.
Exactly. It then predicts that the people of a coming prince will destroy the city and the sanctuary.
Which happened.
It's a precise description of what happened within a single generation when the Roman general Titus besieged Jerusalem, leveled the city, and completely destroyed the Second Temple in AD 70.
And just as a quick historical aside from our sources, the physical walls of Jerusalem have remained this absolute focal point of history ever since.
Yeah, constantly contested.
Right. They were famously rebuilt again centuries later by the Ottoman Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent in the 1500s. The physical geography of this city and these mathematical timelines, they're just completely entangled. Looking at Daniel's map, it's like a divine GPS dropped a pin on an exact day, centuries in advance, 173,880 days.
It is a stunning piece of textual precision.
But wait, if the math was so perfect for AD 33, why is the internet currently obsessed with calculating new dates?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right. If the stopwatch already stopped and the prophecy was fulfilled, Why is the online world so chaotic right now with scattered, conflicting claims about when the Messiah returns? Why are people winding the stopwatch back up?
Because human nature abhors a vacuum, especially when it comes to the future. That deep psychological desire for mathematical certainty didn't die in the first century. It just got a massive software update.
A software update, I love that.
People are taking the search for divine clues into the digital age, using high-tech methods to decode ancient texts. Enter the modern era of prophecy, where movements claim the Messiah hasn't just been calculated, but has already returned.
Which brings us to one of the most fascinating and, frankly, bizarre sources in the stack, the Lord Rael movement.
Yeah, it's a textbook example of modern messianic claims adapting to the internet age. The name Rael itself is a constructed symbol. Re in Egyptian translates to word or speech, and El is a traditional Hebrew name for God.
Word of God.
Right, so Rael means word of God. But the movement also freely admits it's a truncation and reversal of a modern man's name, Raymond Elwood Lear.
And this group isn't looking to 2026 for his arrival. They claim he already touched down.
Yeah, on January 28, 2011.
They point to alleged eyewitness accounts and an Israeli government weather camera that purportedly captured a glowing anomaly descending over the Temple Mount, moving toward the Dome of the Rock.
And they view this as fulfilling biblical passages about lightning flashing from the east to the west.
It's wild. To build their timeline, they look at Jubilee years.
Right, Jubilees.
In ancient Israel, a Jubilee occurred every 50 years. It was a massive socioeconomic reset. Debts were forgiven, slaves were freed, ancestral land was returned. This movement views Jubilees as prophetic milestones for the land of Israel.
They point to 1917 when the British took control of Jerusalem from the Ottomans.
Okay, and then 50 years later?
1967, the Six-Day War, where Israel took the Old City.
Wow.
And finally, 50 years after that, the 2017-2018 Jubilee year, which they view as the completion of these cycles, ushering in end times chastisements.
But the mechanism they use to validate these claims is what really caught my eye. They use something called Torah codes.
Or equidistant letter sequences.
Right, so essentially they take the original Hebrew text of the first 5 books of the Bible, strip out all the spaces, and run it through a computer program that skips a set number of letters.
Just scanning for patterns?
Exactly. So it reads every 10th letter or every 50th letter, searching for hidden messages. The Rael movement claims that when you search the code for the phrase, "He is the Messiah," the algorithm finds it immediately preceded by "R. Lear."
And they view this as fulfilling another prophecy from Daniel, which states that knowledge will increase at the time of the end.
Oh, so they think the computers are part of the prophecy.
Exactly. They genuinely believe this cryptographic message system was deliberately concealed by a divine author 3,000 years ago, specifically waiting for modern computers to be invented to decipher it.
That is intense.
And they pair these digital codes with massive celestial anomalies. They claim a binary star system called Nemesis, along with a rogue planet Nibiru, are the actual mechanisms causing the drastic climate change and planetary cataclysms we're seeing right now.
Oh, so the natural disasters are part of it too.
Yeah, they view them as divine judgments leading right up to the critical years of 2025 and 2026.
Okay, I have to jump in here with an analogy because the equidistant letter sequences, it sounds to me like a giant cosmic word search puzzle.
It kind of is. To the believers, the intersection of these coded names with actual geopolitical events and observable astronomical anomalies removes the element of chance. They see a higher intelligence actively coordinating the text and the timeline.
I see. It's incredibly easy to look at everything we've just discussed, the 1818 Bible math, Daniel's lunar calendar, digital Torah codes, and weather camera anomalies, and just dismiss it all as fascinating but ultimately harmless internet fringe theory.
If the story stopped on internet message boards, yes.
Right.
But here is the critical pivot of our deep dive today. These messianic expectations, these specific 6,000-year timelines, have escaped the internet.
They're real world now.
Yes. These exact same theological beliefs are currently driving the literal military, agricultural, and political policies of a nuclear-armed state.
We are talking about the state of Israel and specifically the government of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
Exactly. To understand the breaking headlines of today, March 28, 2026, you must understand a concept known as the redemptive doctrine.
Redemptive doctrine.
According to detailed analyses from sources like Alestical Newspaper and Middle East Eye, powerful far-right factions within Netanyahu's governing coalition operate on the absolute belief that our current era is quite literally the time of the awaited Messiah.
And Netanyahu himself is routinely utilizing this language. He recently stated in speeches that Israel will reach the kingdom and that the era of the Messiah has come.
It's highly charged rhetoric.
Very. He is actively portraying the current regional conflicts as a binary battle between the children of light and the children of darkness. He even invoked ancient scriptures, like Isaiah's prophecy, to justify bringing devastation to their enemies.
And it is crucial to understand that for his coalition partners, this isn't just rhetorical flourish or political speech writing.
It's literal to them.
Completely. There is a deeply entrenched belief among these groups, including the highly influential Shabbat sect, whose supporters are frequently seen waving flags bearing the word Mashiach, or Messiah, that a mandatory prerequisite for the Messianic era is the physical rebuilding of the Third Temple.
Right.
And they believe it must be built on the exact footprint of the ancient temples, which is currently the site of the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound.
Which happens to be one of the most fiercely contested and sensitive pieces of religious real estate on the planet.
Without a doubt.
And the practical, physical preparations they are making to achieve this.
Yeah.
It stunned me when I read the source material. They aren't just holding prayer vigils. The government sponsored over 50,000 visits to the Temple Mount in 2023 alone to establish a presence.
Yeah, laying the groundwork.
They really are. Radical groups have actually sewn the intricate priestly garments using ancient techniques. They've crafted the specific musical instruments required by Torah law for temple worship.
They've even solved the most difficult logistical problem of ancient ritual purity. According to the Book of Numbers, before any priest can enter the Holy of Holies or begin construction, they must be purified using the ashes of a perfectly unblemished red heifer.
Which brings us right back to the men with the magnifying glasses in the Golan Heights.
Exactly.
They are secretly actively breeding a herd of red heifers imported from Texas to fulfill this exact 3,000-year-old requirement. It's incredible. It's like two people waiting for a train.
Oh.
Most religious believers are sitting on a bench hoping the prophesied train arrives eventually. But these groups aren't waiting. They're out in the sun, laying the steel tracks, building the station, and printing the tickets to force the train to show up on their schedule.
That is the defining characteristic of the redemptive doctrine. It is a theology of accelerationism.
But at what point does an ancient prophecy stop being a mystical prediction of the future and become a deliberate, state-sponsored political blueprint?
When the blueprint requires destruction to clear the path.
Wow.
And that is the most dangerous dynamic in the Middle East right now. Because a core tenet of this extremist redemptive doctrine is the belief that to bring about the Messiah, the world cannot be at peace.
It can't.
No. The world must reach the brink of a massive, chaotic war. They believe God's hand must be forced by global conflict. They call it the birth pangs of the Messiah, the idea that a new, perfect world can only be born through agonizing violence and regional upheaval.
Which brings us directly to today. Because right now, the fuse on that exact regional upheaval has been lit.
According to our latest briefings spanning major news networks, the U.S. and Israel have been engaged in a direct, escalating war with Iran dubbed Operation Epic Fury since February 28th of this year.
And the cascading global effects are devastating. The Iran backs Houthis in Yemen, who view themselves as a critical part of the axis of resistance, have fully entered the fray.
Yes, they have.
They're firing advanced ballistic missiles directly at Israeli military sites.
And critically, the Houthis control the coastline of the Red Sea. Their targeted attacks on international shipping have effectively blocked the Red Sea corridor.
Completely blocked it.
Major global shipping conglomerates have been forced to detour their massive cargo ships all the way around the southern tip of Africa. We are talking about a total disruption to 15% of all global seaborne trade.
I want to pause here and connect this directly to you, the listener, because this isn't just an abstract theological debate happening thousands of miles away.
Not at all.
Because the Red Sea is blocked by factions actively trying to trigger or survive a holy war, global trade is bottlenecked. That ancient theology is the exact, tangible reason why the price of your groceries is spiking today.
Yeah, the economic impact is huge.
It's why the supply chain for your electronics is delayed. Furthermore, the Strait of Hormuz, where 20% of the world's oil and liquefied natural gas passes, is right at the center of this conflict. Oil prices are skyrocketing.
And in response, President Trump has issued massive ultimatums, threatening to aggressively attack Iran's energy plants to force that strait open.
It's total powder keg.
And we must synthesize these geopolitical facts with the theological framework we discussed earlier. Prime Minister Netanyahu continues to refuse a ceasefire. He is framing the continuation of this grinding, devastating conflict not merely as a matter of national security, but as a divine imperative.
A divine imperative.
Yes. Years ago, he told an incredibly influential rabbi that he believed he would be the one to personally hand over the scepter to the Messiah. Yes. Today, his far-right coalition partners are actively pushing to expand the war further into Lebanon and deeper into Iran. They do not view this chaos as a failure of diplomacy. They view it as the necessary, prophesied birth pangs.
It's like two people sitting down to play a game of chess, but one player thinks they're actually playing Monopoly.
That's a great way to put it.
Traditional diplomacy is chess. You trade pieces, you sacrifice pawns, you compromise to protect your king and preserve the board. But if the other side genuinely believes that flipping the board over and burning the table is exactly what God commanded them to do to win the game, how do you even sit at the table with them? How can traditional peace talks or traditional leverage possibly work?
You've perfectly diagnosed the fundamental paralysis of the current geopolitical landscape. Traditional diplomacy relies on mutual self-interest.
Right.
It relies on finding a middle ground to preserve human life and stabilize the economy. But if one side's ultimate, unshakable goal is a divinely mandated endgame that explicitly requires conflict, all traditional leverage completely evaporates.
It just disappears.
Economic sanctions, UN resolutions, or political pressure simply do not work against theological absolute certainty.
We have covered a staggering amount of ground today. We have started with the broad mathematical timeline of a 6,000-year countdown discovered in an 1818 family Bible.
Yeah, the macro view.
Then we zoomed in on the ancient lunar calendar precision of Daniel 77's dropping a pin on AD 33. We explored the psychological shift to the digital age, searching for the Messiah through computer-generated Torah codes and the Lord Rail movement.
And we traced how those exact same messianic expectations leaped from the digital world into nuclear state policy.
The redemptive doctrine.
We saw how the belief in a 2026 timeline is actively driving the agricultural preparations for a third temple in the Golan Heights, and ultimately culminating in the ballistic missiles flying across the Middle East today as political factions attempt to force a messianic era of peace through war.
This is exactly why understanding these sources is so vital. You might be listening to this deep dive right now thinking, I don't personally believe in Archbishop Usher's year counts. I don't care about equidistant letter sequences or a 6,000-year cosmic work week.
And that's fair.
But the undeniable reality is this. The people currently holding the levers of global military and economic power do believe it. Their actions, driven by their interpretations of these ancient texts, are directly impacting global stability, global trade, and your daily life.
Because knowledge is most valuable when we apply it to decipher the world around us. Understanding their theological framework doesn't require you to agree with it, but it is absolutely essential for comprehending why the news looks as chaotic as it does today. It reveals the hidden logic behind the headlines.
We all crave a clean diagnosis of the world's problems. We want the world to make logical, rational sense. But I want to leave you with a brand new, slightly unsettling concept to ponder on your own as you look at the news tonight.
What's that?
If human beings, utilizing the massive power of a modern state, advanced weaponry, and agricultural engineering, are capable of intentionally engineering the geopolitical conditions of the apocalypse to perfectly match ancient texts, does it actually matter if the prophecy was divinely inspired in the first place? Or is the sheer overwhelming power of human belief enough to bring about the end of an era entirely on its own?